Hello and welcome to a new video. This one's a Corgi Major articulated truck that strangely turned out to be a tale of two Corgi Majors. As you can see on the turntable here, somebody's previously tried to paint it up in the style of a Unigate truck. I'm not quite sure whether it was done by the previous owner or whether he bought it like this. So I'm just separating the two halves here and having a look around, assessing the damage, because we've got a couple of kind of slightly bent axles, the windscreen's cracked on two sides, the paintwork needs a little bit of improvement, so we'll figure out how to get it apart and get it into the stripper soon. On further examination, it turned out to be that the unit of the truck, there was a Corgi Major Michelin truck, Corgi 1109, and the back half was a completely unrelated Corgi 1137, which has been around since England won the World Cup in 1966. In fact, I remember having one of this particular model as a child in that nice bright blue livery with the chrome-sided doors. Just staring at it now, trying to figure out how to get it apart. I've pre-drilled the rivets at this point, so I can try and get it to pieces and see what I need to be doing. Obviously the cab's hinged on this front section, but it wasn't too good. It seemed to have been forced a little bit perhaps in its earlier days, and didn't sit too well on the stanchions where it was supposed to be. I just popped out the interior there. This is a one-piece mould, a little separate steering wheel, and I'm trying to fathom what happens with the removal of the glass. It's not stuck in, but as you can see, it's pretty well broken. The hole in the roof turned out to be a fitment for a Michelin man that sat on the roof of the articulated truck that this thing originally was. So you can see we've got an engine in there. Moving on now to pulling apart the Arctic truck. I've pre-drilled and removed the back wheels and the bogies. In between the wheels there we've got some plastic spring leaves that actually do act as suspension. They're partly overpainted, but you can see the original red paint showing wherever the brush didn't touch. Just taking apart the uncoupling unit now that brings down the fifth wheel, I think they're called, but I could be wrong about that. I'm not a class 1 truck driver. 4 pieces. There's a spring there. I'm going to leave that in place. I don't think it needs removing. It's fairly well on, so I'm just going to leave it there. Levering apart the rivets here. I've drilled them most of the way through, but there's still a little bit hanging on. So it's 2 of the sliding doors out, which have got really thick layers of paint on them, and I do end up reordering some spares from model supplies because they're beyond salvage. It would seem that the previous guy had really scratched away at it trying to get the decals off and completely ruined the surface. You see again much of the original metallic blue paint inside the trailer there, and the red base. At this point I've drilled the chassis, which again splits in 2 halves by the diesel tanks. I'm trying to find an entrance to get in with my screwdriver to lever them that won't do any further damage or bodge any holes in my already part-worn fingers. And it's fighting me all the way, this one. And there she goes, it's given up. And it's split into two halves, and that's freed up the diesel motor, which I'll be doing a bit of detailing on as well. Well, it's that out of the way. They've been in the caustic soda and now the coat of primer, as you can see. And I'm just doing the back wheel arches here with a black base coat. Because at this point I'm not decided whether to put a clear on them and make them shiny or leave them dull, because I expect they would have been plastic or rubber back in the day anyway. This is one half of the chassis. On the underneath and at the front, that you can see the hinge there where it pivots to open the cab. Same thing, I'm spraying them with a black base coat sealer dark I should say, but these definitely will be lacquering. One of the advantages of using the base coat sealer dark is you do get the option of leaving it matte or putting the shine out with the gloss afterwards. Just get a nice coverage there, because at this point I'm not sure which bits are going to show when it's reassembled and which aren't. So I get a good full coverage everywhere. The underneath of the chassis, I've taped it off at this point because I only want to black the underneath. I want to leave the sides in white. Later on they're going to be getting a coat of poppy red, which is a pretty good facsimile of the Unigate colour. Nice shot there of the empty airbrushing cabinet. Looks as though I could do with changing the filters. Just finishing off the black on the chassis and moving on to the back doors. I've already put a base white on these. And what's going on is a transparent sealer, because I'm going to be doing a bit of masking on these doors later on, and the transparent sealer does help a little bit with not letting the paint peel off quite so easy when you're heavily masking. So just another little bit of protection helps you out. There's nothing more disappointing than bringing the paint off with the doors. For those that are interested, I'm spraying at 40 psi, which is pretty much what I use for everything. I know some people prefer lower, but I stick to the 40 psi. Here's the cab here now. It's already had again a primer and a coat of white, and because once on the cab I'll also be applying quite a bit of masking tape. I'm dropping a base coat. I'm dropping rather a sealer onto this too, to give it a bit of protection. And got the back of the trailer now all ready for his first shot of the poppy red, which is quite an orange tone, as you'll see when it goes on. And I think it looks pretty well on for the Unigate livery back in the day. I'm doing this truck for a friend of mine who his father and himself worked for the dairies as deliveryman, roundsman for quite a long time. It's quite a proud part of his heritage, and he likes to collect all things Unigate. I do believe there is a factory version of this now, but haven't seen one on the shelves for some time, so I'm doing him his own. Just building it all up in nice light coats till it's a satisfactory coverage. Orange and white's not too bad. Sometimes you can have a bit of difficulty with bleed through on these paler colours, but this one's not come out too bad. Onto the side doors now. Same story. It's a Pro Colour poppy orange. Unfortunately, you can't buy Pro Colour in this country anymore. It's one of the things we lost out on with EU legislation. The American manufacturing company just didn't want to comply to the latest EU rules. So it was a simpler proposition for them to just simply stop supplying it to Europe. Wonderful. Or at least that's the story that my paint supplier told me. In fact, anybody knows that turns out not to be the case and you can still get it from somewhere, I'd be more than happy to hear, because I do think it's a very nice airbrush paint. Just flashing it off here now with a hot air gun. What I'm doing here is I'm blowing cold air through this hairdryer. Sometimes if you use the hot, you can soften the paint, and then you'll lose it when you go to peel off your masking. So vinyl paint dries through movement of air anywhere. Acrylics dry through movement of air. So cold air will work just as well for you. Same story now, masking the bottom end of the cabin, matching up the livery. Just if you want a headache, try figuring out the masking up for a truck that you've taken to pieces, and you want the line and the stripe to match up all the way along. It's a good exercise in patience, I can assure you. Got the cab standing on a loo roll, which is a tip picked up from Michael from Gravesend Diecast Salvage over there in Australia. Hi Michael. And now it's time to put them together again. And this was a very long-winded process. I decided against the notion of gluing anything together. I've drilled and tapped all of these rivet points because I suspected that it was going to get handled rather more than the trucks I usually build for myself and put in the cabinet. So I decided to go with tapping and screwing all of these parts back again. There's a combination of 2 and 3 millimeter screws, tapped and died depending on the size and the location of the fixings. And again, it's just a patience job, slotting all of these components in and not having one fall out on you as you put it back together again. The back door's going on. And I must confess at this point that I've put the back doors on upside down at least twice during the process. So you're seeing the third time that's a charm. Checking the fit, checking the doors slide. Not quite down to the bottom of the old rivet heads, so boom, and we're away. And I'm just popping the washers and the 2mm screws in now. Quite a fiddle as well with little fat fingers, 2mm screw, machine screws. The only ones I could buy had got those star drive heads on them, which just added another layer of fiddle, I must admit. And I think that's almost the last one home. And I'm just tightening them down in a pattern now to make sure it's gone down square on all the corners. And that one's not cooperating and got to be done again. I think my original notion was to put a 2mm washer and a 3mm washer on there, but it looked as though it was going to show underneath the chassis, so I took the 3mm spacer out and just tapped the hole a little bit deeper so that I could get the screw all the way home. As I say, normally I just glue these kind of things, but as this is not mine, and I don't know how careful the new owner is going to be with it, I thought I would make sure, kind of belt and braces style, and drill and tap them all. All the doors are closing. Side doors are sliding back to where I need them to be. So that's all gone together satisfactorily. That's it, click. Roll him over and fit the running gear now. I've already refitted the plastic springs that I was talking about, the leaf springs, and then the wheels just rest on top of them to provide a bit of suspension. Must have been quite an innovation in 1966 on a Corgi toy, that. Put the bogies on that hold the wheels in place. And another one of me stainless steel screws. Send that one home. A little bit of back wheel secured on. Oh, I did find this bogie wheel device a bit of a faff, I must admit. Couldn't quite decide which way to put it in. There's a hook that goes through the little wheels to lift them up and down or pull them back and forth, and there's a slot for them to fit into, but there's also a slot for the sliding plate to go into. And I fiddled with it for ages because I couldn't quite decide. I felt like the wheels ought to move more than they did and that I'd got something lined up wrong, but after a bit of perseverance and lifting in and out and trying and head scratching, I figured it out in the finish. I wouldn't have thought the two bits of metal would put up quite such a fight, but this one certainly did. Right, you got it all in place. Quick, get the plate on before anything moves. Other way around. That's it, other way, good man. You've got it. Like that, nicely rotated on the rivets. Nothing's moved, it's all working okay. Just a case of getting a couple of screws into it, which I'm desperately fiddling for in my little container. One of the benefits that I got out of doing this is it forced me hand on buying myself a little box of really small washers, which I'd been contemplating doing for a long time but never actually got round to until I needed them for this job. I'm sure we all know that one. was picking these up off the carpet for a few days afterwards as well. Pretty confident I heard one or two whizzing around the head of the vacuum cleaner also. Much to the delight of Mrs. 59. Well, that's it. That's the last one home on the trailer. Time to put the cab together. So detailed the interior up a bit because it was just bright red plastic. I've given it a kind of wash over with a mid-brown and matte black the carpet. Bit of detailing on the dash for the clocks, steering wheel and so forth. Just looked better than a bit of bright red plastic in there, I thought. Sanding it in with the forceps. I've had to glue replacement sections into the windscreen because unfortunately I couldn't buy a spare one anywhere, and all of the ones on the loose cabs that I looked at were just as broken up as the one that was supplied. So I've cut some clear acrylic and popped it into place. This is the section that holds the hinge in place for the tilting cab, and I must admit it was a bit of a nightmare. I think it's days have been played with by a kid that it had been strained, and I was trying to try and bend it back too far. The two halves of the chassis back together again and secure the engine. Again, I've done a bit of detailing on the engine, just makes it look a bit nicer. Just trying to find something to balance it out level now. Pencil's not quite tall enough. I'll do the scalpel. And these are two of the larger 3mm pins I'm putting in here to hold the two halves of the chassis together. Fiddling around with this small Allen key. But it's worked out well because it's a justification to buy some really smart looking aluminium drivers that I saw in the RC model shop the other day, which I must desperately now own in case I ever have to do one of these again. Nothing to do with the fact that there are purple anodised aluminium and look really pretty. It's just because I desperately need to own them, because you never know when you're going to build another Ford. Yeah, this is the bit that was the most fun. There's a little tab there that hooks into the front of the cab and pokes out in the radiator. But it really put a fight up to locate properly. There are two kind of locating pins that form a hinge, and you've got to fiddle them into place on that chrome plated part. Then the chrome plated part has to slot into this little gap on the front of the cab, and then the whole thing has to go back together again. Obviously in the factory it was riveted. I'm using a screw to hold it all together, which fought me all the time. But I got there in the end. I think the fact that it was so small and it was one of these Torx headed things and the torque screwdrivers I've got weren't magnetic, so nothing was really playing for me on that one. That's the chassis back together again, and the cab on. Done a bit of detailing on the underneath prop shaft and straps on the diesel tanks. Now this wheel was really wobbly and getting ready to fall off anyway, so I've drawn it off completely, tidied it up as best as I can, and using a bit of a Krapodnik technology here with the super glue, that 5-minute glue that dries, 5-second glue I should say, that dries with the aid of a UV lamp that they provide you in the kit. As the advantage of it, it'll run down onto the axle, kind of fill up the gap and take a little bit of the wobble out of it, and then you can cure it quite quickly. It sort of helps to reform the missing bits of plastic from where the wheel's been bent and forced in the past. Takes a bit of lining up, but it's worth the effort in the end, as long as you don't weld yourself with the UV, weld your finger to the wheel with the UV light when you're working on it. Often I use zip kicker to accelerate the chronoaculates. Everybody will have seen me or heard me say hit it with a zip kicker, but for this particular one it was a bit of an imprecise tool. This does really do quite a nice little neat job. Now this cab should have originally had a Michelin Man sitting on top of it, so I was left with a hole in the roof I didn't want to fill because I'm never really happy with the finish on them. So I've taken a micro brush and made my own kind of white roof aerial for the cab, which is pretty effective, and because of the way that they're made, it's not likely to ping off or break or anything. So the outcome of it, I've done the same thing on a few Dinkies and Corgis that have had aerials missing, and because they're soft and pliable, I think they're a better solution than I've seen some people do, putting a bit of wire in, and it kind of grieves me to buy replacement aerials if I don't need to. But as I say, I think it looks pretty effective. Just straightening it out and lining it up now, just make sure it looks okay, and a bit of an extra treatment of the glue with the curing light. Seems to have gone off. Tilt saw still working pretty fine. And at this point I notice there's a tiny chip of paint on the inside of the glass. I'll try and give it a tap to see if that'll dislodge it, and obviously not. So off camera for a second or two, I end up taking the entire cab apart again so that I can get this little rogue piece of paint off and stop it from driving me crazy for the rest of the build. So I'll put it together again now, and I'm just coupling the two halves of my Frankenstein truck. And it's locked together, and here she is on the turntable. Been quite busy with this one. Added some number plates and detailing here and there. It's obviously custom painted livery, trying to copy a nice picture I found on Google of a 70s Unigate truck. Well, I hope you've enjoyed my little video. I know it's been the first one for a while. If you're watching for the first time, thank you very much for having the patience to watch. If you're a regular viewer, I do appreciate your patience in waiting for me to produce another one. Hopefully things will be getting back to a bit closer to normal soon, and I'll be producing rather more regular content in the new year. So thank you very much. I've been Hellboy59. You've been, as ever, very patient. See you again soon. Bye.